Stearns could help Ross become the Red Hawk, or maybe, as the supervillain, the leader, he's simply the big bad of the movie who's trying to reorganize the world into a one-world government. So from all that information, we can make a few guesses about how the Harvest ties into this film. First of all, Secret Invasion, the comic book, was a very important crossover because, in the aftermath, the supervillain Norman Osborn was put in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he started to remake the world's security. He formed his own team of Dark Avengers, comprised of supervillains masquerading as heroes. So bring that idea back around to the Harvest. Superhero blood, Hawk blood, blood.
Blood. And bits of sick.
Think of Thunderbolt Ross as the embodiment of all of Nick Fury's worst traits. In The Incredible Hulk, he's hunting down Banner because
that man's whole body is property of the U.S. Army.
In that movie, he gives Blonsky a super soldier serum to combat the Hulk. So even in his first appearance in the MCU, we see him trying to harness superhumans to tighten his control of the world. Like Fury, he ends up just having to trust the superhuman, the Hulk, to do the right thing and defeat the Abomination. But Ross didn't learn from this lesson. He doubled down. He spearheaded the Sokovia Accords, split up the Avengers, even hunted down Black Widow, and really just out of spite. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ross, or his namesake super team the Thunderbolts, were the answer to that in the MCU. Now, those titles for Cap 4 does sound like it's about the world governments coalescing into a single government, which could kick off the war with Wakanda, Talokan, or New Asgard, or, like we talked about in this video, World War III could actually break out when these superpower nations refuse to bend the knee. Now, this would mean that by the time Kang rolls in, the Earth is defenseless to stop him. Now, that does sound a bit too much like Phase 3, where Civil War divided the heroes prior to Thanos' arrival. So I'm sure that Marvel's not going to repeat the exact same beats, but this setup of Fury collecting hero blood can take the MCU in so many interesting and fun directions, and I am pumped for it. And everybody, just remember to head to zbiotics.com/ScreenCrush and use the code ScreenCrush at checkout for 15% off. Thanks again, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this video, and I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of all this? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
They're flexible schools from a flexible child. Environmental suits for learning.
Thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. And let's talk about it. Thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video.
Look at me! You did this!
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the final episode of Secret Invasion.
And here we go.
So for the most part, I'm going to keep my opinions to myself about this episode just so we can focus on the breakdown. There is a lot of good to focus on in this finale, and the episode does set up some very interesting repercussions for the MCU, like sets up new teams and directly sets up Captain America Brave New World. In a couple of days, we will have a review video out, but in the meantime, let's break this baby down. The episode begins in the aftermath of Priscilla and Gaia fighting off the Skrulls in the Fury home.
Oh yeah, that fight where shape-shifting aliens broke in loudly through glass windows.
Yep, that's the one. One of the strongest aspects of this show is the relationship between Nick and Vara. Samuel L. Jackson and Charlene Woodard are able to imbue these characters with an easy, lived-in energy, even though we're mostly hearing about their relationship and haven't seen it develop over other movies and shows. They feel like a real married couple. Fury says,
I have dialed this number 1,000,000 times.
And the episode sheds some light on why Fury went to the space station alone and didn't bring his wife. Later on, Gaia as Fury says,
You know, the last thing I felt before I flaked relief.
Now, this was Gaia pretending to be Fury, so we don't really know if this is how Fury actually felt, but it would make sense that he just wanted to put the Skrulls behind him, and that would include his wife. After all, he spent years and years lying to the Skrulls, using them. And if he was lying to the Skrulls, that means he was lying to his wife for over a decade.
But why couldn't Fury find the Skrulls at home? Aren't there like hundreds of planets out in the galaxy?
Well, in this past video we did, we speculated that the reason for that was twofold. One, they needed to find a planet that was far away from the Kree Empire. And two, there would be a lot of anti-Skrull, anti-shape-shifting sentiment out there in the universe. I mean, think about it. In episode 2, we learned that the Skrulls used to be a very war-mongering race.
We did not end up homeless refugees because we were unwilling to wage war. We ended up homeless refugees because we were too willing.
And it's pretty obvious why you wouldn't want a shape-shifting race on your world. They could replace you and take over your planet. The Skrulls probably did this for centuries before their disastrous war with the Kree. Now, one cool thing about this show is the focus on Nick Fury, who is kind of like the MCU's Batman, who now has kind of lost his mojo.
The fact that you don't know tells me all I need to know about this new, rather old Nick Fury.
He has no powers. He's not an alien. He's just an exceptional human being with an exceptional tactical mind. But what really sets this series apart is how it dives into what makes Fury human. His life is filled with mistakes and traumas. We see a broken man, someone who cannot cope with his own failures and regret. And that makes him so relatable because everybody in the world has faced difficult times and trauma like this. I mean, I know I have. I have gone through very dark times in my life when I just hated myself and I couldn't see a way out. But therapy can help. And a lot of you may want therapy, but you feel like it's too expensive or too far away or you don't know how to get started. And that is where BetterHelp comes in. They're the sponsor of this video. Like, I'm from a rural area where it's really hard to find therapists. So BetterHelp, to get started, you just send messages straight. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy. Now back to what I was saying.
Anyways, Fury calls to tell Vara goodbye as we intercut between our two storylines in this episode. One is Gaia's attack on the compound that she used to call home, and the other is the hilarious standoff between Fury, Ritz, Sonya, and Rhodey. Now, knowing now that it's Gaia and not Fury walking to the base, it's a little bit harder. Gaia believed in this place. She trained and recruited soldiers for Gravik's war in this place, so she knows exactly how to breach their defenses. First, she walks by Beto's corpse. Now, this is on the same spot where we saw Gravik slit his throat last episode, and this is a real heartbreaker for Gaia. I mean, after all, she recruited Beto, she brought him into this life, and then she sees that Gravik has apparently killed all the Skrulls that worked for him.
Why'd he do that?
Well, they staged a coup against him, and this shows that Gravik never really cared about the Skrull people. They were just tools for him to get what he wanted, more power and revenge on Fury. Gaia also knows where all the cameras are in the compound, so she's very careful to keep up the old man Fury act, stopping to cough and take iodine pills to protect against the radiation. Back at the most understaffed hospital on the planet, Sonya tells Rhodey that Fury is closing in. She does this to panic Rhodey so he'll move the president.
Why wouldn't you just keep the president in that room, surrounded by security?
Because Sonya needed to pick off the security one at a time.
Oh, okay. I don't really understand, but you're the human. You seem to know what stuff is.
So Rhodey was arguing with an admiral about ordering an attack on Russia, and the admiral says that the motorcade attack could have been a false flag operation.
What's a false flag?
Well, a false flag is just what it sounds like. It's when a country's military wears another country's uniform and then attacks a third country to kick off a war between countries 2 and 3. The Nazis employed a similar tactic to justify their invasion of Poland. Kingsley Ben-Adir gets his time to shine as Gravik, especially this line.
This face. This was the first human I killed.
Man, I loved all this stuff. Gravik was a very well-nuanced villain. Him taking on the face of his first victim is a way of connecting all of his crimes to Fury's original sin. All of this is only happening because Fury used the Skrulls as soldiers and didn't keep his word. As Gravik said,
And everyone I killed took a little piece out of my heart.
Gut-wrenching. Gravik also mentions Fury's invisible cloak, which probably refers to the stealth mode on the helicarrier. Then Gaia lures him into the middle of the chamber. Now remember, Gravik would never suspect that she is actually Fury because he has no idea the guy is alive. And also, Fury is his weakness. His hatred for Fury blinds him and makes him put himself in a very vulnerable position. Now notice the floor of the chamber almost looks like a star chart. Pretty neat detail since Gravik believes that getting powers will lead to the Skrulls finding a new home on Earth. Now, even though this is not the real Fury, he does land a line that really hits at the heart of the show.
Because it's easier to save the lives of 8 billion people than it is to change their hearts and minds.
This connects to Fury talking about growing up in segregated Alabama in episode 2. He's seen firsthand how humanity is blinded by racism and hatred.
Coming out of Alabama, we always had to ride in the color car.
And this episode's ending proves him right. Anti-Skrull paranoia has erupted all over the planet.
Yeah, but shouldn't that have been part of the show? That would have been so cool.
Yeah. Then he says,
You know why I came back to Earth? You were the youngest Skrull on my team.
And this is very clever. Gaia has no idea if that's true or not, but this is what Gravik would want to hear. He would want to hear that Fury thinks that Gravik is so important to him, because Fury is all Gravik thinks about. For Gravik, it's also poetic justice that he's getting the DNA of Carol Danvers. After all, she was the one who promised to find his people a home, but instead of using her powers to help the Skrulls, she spent a generation out in the cosmos helping others. Replicating the powers of the heroes was a major part of the Secret Invasion comic book. The Skrulls imprisoned the entire Illuminati, conducting experiments on them to learn how to replicate their abilities. Now, we should have known that this wasn't Fury, though, when he said this.
Wipe out some other species, I don't give a damn.
And then back to the hospital for what I kind of think is the low point for the MCU.
Give me your gun, goddammit.
That's not good, person.
Look, okay, I guess this particular president just feels better if he has a gun. Now, I'm sure they just needed him to get a gun so we could have that big standoff at the end, but maybe, I don't know, like this bodyguard could have been shot and then his gun could have fallen on the gurney or something. It is also weird that Ritson is in a gurney instead of in a wheelchair, but one thing this scene does sell really well is how much of a stupid idiot Ritson is. I mean, if the whole point of this show is to show that this guy is a terrible president who will soon be replaced by Harrison Ford in the movie Captain America Brave New World, then I get it. Hell, Fury basically tells us this is going to happen.
That's real one-term president stuff.
Alright, so then back to Gravik, where Gaia's master plan is about to unfold. She's in the middle of the chamber with Gravik, who has no idea that he's about to give her superpowers.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah, Doug, what?
So her plan was to let Gravik make himself all-powerful, and then she was just hoping that he would have her stand in the middle of the machine too?
That's what we're going with, but let's not get too bogged down with the idea that she should have fought Gravik before he got all the powers of every MCU character ever. There is some fun cameos in here that include all of the DNA samples that Fury has collected, and not just the people who fought in the Battle of Earth. For instance, we see Ghost. He would have had her DNA because she was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent for years. The names we see are Captain America, Corvus Glaive, Thanos, Outrider, Proxima Midnight, Captain Marvel, Abomination.
How'd he get his DNA?
Well, the Abomination was held captive by S.H.I.E.L.D. for years. And there's Mantis, Cull Obsidian, Drax, Korg, Ebony Maw, Frostbeast, Hulk, Chitauri, Valkyrie, Thor Odinson, pretty cool to use his official full name there, Gamora, Florus Colossus, that's Groot by the way, and the Winter Soldier. And then Gaia and Gravik have a big fight where they run through a lot of these powers. And notice that these are only the heroes whose powers are tied directly to their DNA. Doctor Strange is not included because his abilities are a learned skill, and Wanda Maximoff is also not in the mix even though she is the strongest Avenger. This is because her abilities are also mystical. The chaos magic of Chthon has turned her into
Scarlet Witch.
God, remember those days? Just such a high bar for the MCU. Well, this Ritson gun scene is kind of a low bar. There's not a lot to break down in this scene, just a lot of people trying to convince Ritson that Rhodey is a Skrull. It would have been kind of cool if there was at least one scene where there were two identical people and Ritson didn't know who to shoot. But all of this is pretty much the old cliche, I'm not the imposter, he's the imposter kind of scene. Again, if the point of the scene is to show that Ritson is a stupid, weak president, mission accomplished. Let's go through the powers that Gaia and Gravik display in the fight, which was basically this scene with a lot of MCU Easter eggs thrown in.
All you have to do, go away! Stop standing in the driveway talking about custody!
First, we see the Extremis healing abilities. Gravik starts with one Groot arm and then a Cull Obsidian arm going for just brute strength. Gaia counters with Drax's arm as Gravik uses super strength to throw a card. Now, I don't think he has the strength of like the Hulk, the Abomination, and everybody combined. I think it's more like pick a power and use them one at a time kind of thing. Then Gaia uses Ghost power to phase through the car as Gravik suddenly has the ear of the Abomination and the arm of Korg.
Man, they got good at using those powers really fast.
They sure did. Gaia uses the Frostbeast abilities to create an ice arm, and then she uses the powers of Captain Marvel to ram him. Now, as they're falling through the air here, it seems like he's using Thanos' strength against her. Like, look at his arm here. It looks very much like Thanos' arm. And she gains the upper hand by using the powers of Mantis. Then she flies above him, striking a pose that is very Captain Marvel. After he wakes up, he uses the telekinetic powers of Ebony Maw. You remember, this guy.
Your powers are quick. You must be popular with children.
When he uses Maw's telekinesis, he even makes like the same elegant hand gestures, flicking objects through the air. He also, for some reason, replicated Ebony Maw's rings. He creates a Hulk leg to kick her, and we've seen the Hulk kick like this before, like here against Emil Blonsky.
Now what you got?
And also here. Gaia gains the upper hand by going full Captain Marvel binary mode.
What does that mean?
Well, in the comics, for a time, Carol went by the name Binary, and she was this extremely powerful cosmic force whose eyes glowed. So, in the movie Captain Marvel, when she finally unlocked her full powers, we called that her binary mode, kind of like what Gaia does in this show. And then she does a superhero landing.
Superhero landing! Yeah, that's really hard on your knees.
They're still doing those, huh?
I guess so. And now Gaia is by far the most powerful Marvel character of all time, probably next to Wanda. Now, overall, I like the Super Skrull battle. In the comics, the Super Skrull was originally a Skrull warrior with his DNA altered to give him the powers of the Fantastic Four. But over the years, there have been more and more Super Skrulls with different powers. And just like in the comics, they show their abilities by having them transform a part of their bodies, like their limbs or their arms, or like when Gaia grows Mantis's antenna. And then Gaia goes to to free the humans that the Skrulls held captive. There's the doctor who invented the Skrull machine, the art dealer from a few episodes ago, and of course, Rhodey and Everett Ross. Now, we did not get the moment I was hoping for where Rhodey wakes up and says, "Where's Tony?" But we did get something interesting here. Rhodey can't walk, confirming that he was replaced after his accident in Civil War. So this meant that he could have been replaced before or after Avengers Endgame, so he may or may not know that Tony has died. Now, he may not be able to walk here, but remember, we saw Rhodey walking with leg braces in Infinity War and Endgame. Kevin Feige has said that Rhodey has been a Skrull for a while, but I'm guessing we'll find out more in the Armor Wars movie, if that's even still happening.
Who knows anything at this point?
Actually, Ryan, it's worth mentioning that Rhodey is wearing a hospital gown. Now, everyone else who's held captive here seems to be wearing whatever they had on when they were abducted by the Skrulls. So we can assume that Rhodey was wearing this hospital gown when he was taken. So when was Rhodey in the hospital? Well, Captain America Civil War, when Vision accidentally shot him down out of the sky. Rhodey fell down to the ground and was paralyzed. Now, when Rhodey wakes up in this holding chamber, we see him lean forward like he's about to start walking, almost as if he is unaware that he's paralyzed. So I think that it's possible that this Rhodey has been sedated and held captive ever since that fall in Captain America Civil War and when he was undergoing surgery for that fall. If this is the case, that means that Skrull Rhodey was present for Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, which completely changes the way we'll look at those movies going forward.
That's a good point, Colton. Thank you. So then Ritson way overreacts, publicly declaring Skrulls an enemy of Earth.
That is why tonight I'm presenting to Congress for immediate emergency authorization a bill that designates all off-world Gorn species enemy combatants.
Idiot! No!
This is very similar to the ending of X2, X-Men United. That movie was going to end with the president making a speech decrying mutants until the X-Men stepped in to change his mind.
Good morning, Mr. President.
But in this case, Ritson sparks global chaos.
Now you got dumb.
Again, the best president. We have a video coming out really soon about how this can set up Captain America Brave New World, a movie I am very excited for. I mean, think about it. Ritson has just created a chaotic world here. People assassinate politicians because they think they're alien lizard people. This, by the way, is the most realistic thing I've ever seen in the MCU, that people would become totally unhinged by this news. So, of course, amidst all this chaos, a war hero like Thunderbolt Ross, played by Harrison Ford, would win in a landslide, promising to bring law and order to the entire planet. Very similar to how Norman Osborn rose to power after the Secret Invasion comics. If the world is paranoid, chaotic, then that's a recipe for the world governments to become authoritative and take greater control, which might explain why the original title of the Captain America 4 movie was New World Order. Anyways, Fury comes home, where Vara insists on finding out, does he love the real her or her human face?
Did you fall in love with me? Or the face that puts you at ease?
Which again speaks to the larger question here. Can Skrulls ever be accepted by humanity? If Fury can accept Vara in her Skrull form, then there's hope that the rest of humanity can accept the Skrulls too. And by extension, we humans can accept one another as well. Really though, back to Ritson's decision to take revenge on the Skrulls, it seems like he was just embarrassed that Rhodey fooled him for so long and now he's acting out. Cause he's a dumbass.
Give me your gun, goddammit.
I mean, that gun scene was stupid, but it did show how he's the kind of guy who wants control. Just the kind of guy who would declare open season on Skrulls. So maybe the gun scene wasn't such a low bar. Let me know what you thought of that down in the comments below. And then Sonya meets up with Gaia.
I will use you, and you will use me, and together we'll make this planet safe for both our people.
Now, Sonya is basically trying to use Gaia and the remaining Skrulls like Fury did as her agents to bolster the power of her own government. Now, this might lead to Sonya forming MI-13. In the comics, this is a group of British superheroes and agents who are tasked with taking down paranormal threats. Other heroes have been teased who could be part of this team, for instance, like Dane Whitman's Black Knight.
Sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?
I love this scene, though, of them discovering the bodies. Very Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's a great way to show just how deep this conspiracy goes, how many Skrulls are loose on the surface of Earth. This image would have been very cool in an earlier episode where it would have actually mattered. Now, we do know that there will be some international heroes in Brave New World, like Sabra, so I'm actually hoping that Sonya or her team will come back in that movie. Olivia Colman has been my favorite part of this show.
The smart ones start talking earlier than that. You a smart one? Right, no, I didn't think so. Very good at being your bestie. I'm also devilishly good at being not your bestie. It's really just a matter of taste. cake or death.
In the final montage of the chaos, we see that the Prime Minister of Great Britain was back to being a human, but was then assassinated. And this council member, the good one who rebelled against Gravik, successfully fights off an assassination attempt, while Shooter McGavin was shot on air. Honestly, all of this is great, and really should have happened in episode 3 to raise the stakes of the series. And then, just as Fury is about to leave, Vara joins him, and Fury has some good news.
Kree said they're open to peace talks with the Skrulls.
Which is nice. It would mean that the Skrulls could stop running and maybe join their Emperor on New Skrullos. Now, we have seen the Kree sue for peace a lot in recent years. Guardians also began when they wrapped up their 100-year war against Xandar.
We signed your peace treaty, Nova Prime. What more do you want?
Also, apparently, Vara is a great diplomat.
You're the best diplomat the Skrulls have ever had.
Fury asks her to leave, but she says that her work here is too important.
Oh, my work is here, darling. And it's never been more important.
Wait, what work? What's her job? She growing plants?
I have no idea, dude. Kind of seems like that you immediately would say that peace with your people and their oppressors would take greater precedence over growing some plants in your greenhouse, but who can really say? We then get a very sweet scene where he embraces her true form.
I just wanted to tell you that I love you as I am.
Only as you are.
And then they kiss, giving hope that all of humanity could one day live in peace with the Skrulls. After all, if Nick Fury could eventually learn to love his wife of 10 years, then maybe all of humanity can learn to embrace a race of shape-shifting extraterrestrials that try to eradicate the planet with nuclear war.
Well, guys, that's all the Easter eggs we caught, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
Folks here want their cities back.
It's time to hit refresh. To be buttoned up. To feel your best and look it. By using Just for Men shampoo and hair color to eliminate gray in 5 easy...
We know who you are. We know how to find you.
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about the ending of Secret Invasion.
And together we'll make this...
Earth. Presenting to Congress for immediate emergency authorization a bill that designates all off-world-born species enemy combatants. What?
So we all knew the Secret Invasion would likely end with Fury going back to space. After all, that was spoiled in the Marvel's trailer. But now we know he's returning to space to begin talks with the Kree, who are interested in peace talks with the Skrulls, meaning that we could see the Skrulls get to migrate to planet Hala and live in harmony with the Kree. Now, this is pretty significant, considering that the Kree and the Skrulls were at war for a very long time. In Captain Marvel, we learned that unlike in the comics, the Skrulls were not the instigators in their war with the Kree.
My people lived as refugees ever since we resisted Kree rule and they destroyed our planet.
So it makes sense that the Kree would be open to redeeming themselves of their Skrull genocide. After Captain Marvel defeated Yon-Rogg and the Supreme Intelligence and exposed their lies and manipulation of the other Kree, I could see new leadership looking to rectify their past transgressions against the Skrulls.
But why can't the Skrulls just go live on the planet Thanos went on after the snap?
The snap radiation made it inhabitable to them.
The Skrulls were immune to radiation, remember?
Doug, what do you think about this? Doug, are you eating again at work?
No.
Buddy, you gotta stop that. You gotta break your stress eating habit.
I can't help it. The state of the world these days. Am I right?
You are right.
How did you stop stress eating? Did you use that vape?
Oh, no, dude, this is not a vape. It's just an easy way to help me kick my oral fixation habits like stress eating. And it gives my hands something to do when I'm feeling anxious.
Well, what is it?
Well, it's a naturally diffusive device called Fume. They're the sponsor of this video. It uses plants and behavioral science to help you trade out your negative habit for a positive one.
Is it fun?
Yes, it's really nice and completely harmless. Instead of pods that are filled with potentially harmful chemicals like a vape, Fume uses cores infused with plants like orange vanilla and raspberry lemon for delicious natural flavors. Like I said, this is not a vape. Look, it's not even electrical. Fume uses these plant-based cores with flavored air instead of vapor. Plus, it has adjustable airflow and is designed with these movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for calming your anxiety. Fume is helping me turn my negative habits into positive habits, and it makes switching easy and even fun. They have thousands of 5-star reviews from more than 100,000 customers who have used Fume to change their lives and switched when other solutions just didn't work. So,
bagging you will be one hell of a payday.
Won't be as easy as you think.
You're still gonna get whacked. begin.
Head to tryfume.com/ScreenCrush and use the code ScreenCrush to save 10% when you get your Journey Pack today. The Journey Pack comes with 3 unique flavors and everything you need to finally be free of your bad habit. That's tryfum.com and use the code ScreenCrush to save an additional 10% off on your order today. Now back to what I was saying.
She's targeting every planet we call home.
So anyways, in the Marvels, we'll be meeting a new villain, Dar-Ben. Now in the comics, Dar-Ben was very displeased with the Kree's new leader and attempted to assassinate him and place blame on the Skrulls. I think this is exactly what we'll see taking place in the Marvels. A wartime character like Dar-Ben will be very critical of the Kree's new leader, as well as Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel, who she calls
The Annihilator.
Now she likely holds a big grudge against Captain Marvel for destroying the Supreme Intelligence and helping the Skrulls. So when Dar-Ben learns that the new Kree leadership is considering peace talks with the Skrulls, I wouldn't be surprised if we see her assassinate the new Kree leader and try to pin it on the Skrulls, as well as Earth and Captain Marvel, thus putting a stop to any peace talks. And it's worth mentioning Dar-Ben's resemblance to Ronan the Accuser, both wielding those pretty badass Cosmorod hammers.
Excuse me? That's my hammer you've got there.
The Kree and Xandar were once at war, but eventually signed a peace treaty and ended their conflict, but then came Ronan.
My government knows no shame. You Xandarians and your culture are a disease.
So it makes sense if we saw Dar-Ben use a similar tactic to eliminate any discussions of peace. Now, even if the Marvels ends on a really positive note and we see Dar-Ben defeated, that doesn't mean that everything's going to be hunky-dory back on Earth. Even if the Skrulls leave Earth and join the Kree on planet Hala, that won't place the genie that Ritson released back in the bottle. It's been revealed to the American people that shape-shifting aliens have lived amongst them for decades. So even if they show hundreds of thousands of Skrulls boarding ships and leaving Earth, it won't matter. The die has been cast. Some percentage of the people on Earth will still live in constant fear and paranoia, and this paranoia is what will give Thunderbolt Ross the leverage he needs to become the most powerful man on the planet. President Ritson promised to kill every single Skrull, so if he has a change of heart and allows the Skrulls to live in peace, this would be the perfect opportunity for Thunderbolt Ross to step in and paint Ritson as weak and challenge him for the presidency. Captain America films are notoriously political, so getting to see an election take place would be pretty cool. We could see the former Secretary of State paint Ritson as feckless in his war against the Skrulls and promise that he will finish the war that Ritson started.
Former Secretary of State?
Well, yeah, I'm assuming he's no longer Secretary of State. He was gone for 5 years during the blip, so I would guess he was replaced during those 5 years. But hey, if he still is Secretary of State, that'd make him fourth in line for the presidency. So maybe we'll see him kill the President, Vice President, President of the Senate, and Speaker of the House, and see himself sworn in as President, and then blame their deaths on the Skrulls, which will only add fuel to the fire. So whether Ross kills his way to the presidency or challenges Ritson in an election, I see him using the Skrull threat as an opportunity to create his own team of super people, the Thunderbolts. Civil War showed us that Ross was desperate to control the Avengers, and we can even go further back to see the Incredible Hulk when he said,
"As far as I'm concerned, that man's whole body is property of the U.S. Army."
And with the Avengers seemingly being MIA, Ross has all the more leverage to convince the public to accept his new team of heroes. Now, the original title for Captain America 4 was New World Order. This title implied that we'd see the government, aka President Thunderbolt Ross, go full authoritarian, implementing dystopian government.
The ultimate electric driving machine is a BMW. Reese's Cups are now stuffed with Reese's Puffs. Classic Reese's move, Reese's.
And after the fire that Ritson started with his fear-mongering about the Skrulls, the populace may allow Ross to take control without much pushback, willingly surrendering their own basic rights and freedoms to an authoritarian dictator. A dictator who has disguised himself as some kind of noble leader protecting us from a threat that he knows no longer actually exists. And even if characters like Nick Fury, Captain Marvel, Captain America, and so on reveal to the world that the Skrulls are gone, it won't matter. With them being shapeshifters, the world can never be sure. And if they are gone, then Ross will use the argument that they could return. Now, personally, though, I don't think the Skrulls are going to leave so easily. I think they're going to be a secret threat in the MCU for a very, very long time. And I'm not so sure that Ross intends to even stop at the presidency. In Civil War, we saw Ross leading an effort to put the Avengers under the thumb of the United Nations, overseeing more than 100 countries. A new world order is a real-world conspiracy theory that speculates that all world governments will unite as one and control the global populace. You've probably heard your uncle talk about that at Thanksgiving.
But here I come, the government.
So this could be a hint that Ross not only intends to make himself leader of the US, but of the entire planet. using the threat of a global Skrull invasion and his new team to replace the Avengers and protect the planet as leverage to rise to power.
Wait, didn't they change the title to Brave New World?
Yes, after some pushback regarding the title New World Order and its connection to real-world anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, they opted to change the title. But the title Brave New World also points toward themes of a dystopian future. There's a 1930s novel by the same name that showcases a dystopian and authoritarian one-world government that does away with things like individuality. I could easily see Thunderbolt Ross using the phrase Brave New World as a campaign slogan to manipulate the people into surrendering their freedoms and disguising this as patriotism. And let's not forget that Ritson declared war on all life forms not from Earth. And that could include New Asgard. After all, New Asgard has become a kind of alien spaceport on Earth. So the USA could declare that this state of aliens helped other aliens enter the borders of our planet.
Jeez, that's getting real political.
It sure is. In the past, we've talked about similarities between Ross and Norman Osborn from the Secret Invasion comics. Following Secret Invasion, Osborn was made director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and put in charge of the world's security. This led to him forming his own team of villain Avengers, kind of similar to what Ross is doing with the Thunderbolts right now. And what was the event that brought down Norman Osborn? When he tried to lay siege to New Asgard, which at the time was on Earth. If Brave New World is going to be a truly global film, then it would need to address New Asgard in some way, and not just in a lazy news ticker like the one we saw in No Way Home. That ticker read that there was political turmoil in New Asgard, but in Thor Love and Thunder,
there is no conflict.
And real quick, I want to discuss the parallels here between Thunderbolt Ross and the Marvel's villain Dar-Ben. They're both seemingly xenophobic war tyrants. So what if we get to see an Earth-level villain and a cosmic-level villain team up?
To do what, kill Skrulls?
Well, there's that, but no. What if they created a fake war?
Ooh, go on.
Wartime leaders are notorious for harboring unity amongst their people. It's human nature to stick with your own when presented with a threat. For example, after the 2000 election between Al Gore and George W. Bush, the country was very torn. It came down to one state and like 500 votes, and don't even get us started on the whole hanging Chads thing in the Supreme Court. The point being, 50% of the country was furious with the other 50% and vice versa. But then, 9/11 happened. This attack on our country by another country, for the most part, united the American people and gave President Bush a very high approval rating throughout his first term. The country was very divided, but became united when we encountered what was viewed as a common enemy. So, with the Skrulls not being as serious a threat to the people of Earth or planet Hala, what if Ross and Dar-Ben decide to be each other's enemy?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Well, see, Ross and Dar-Ben want the same thing. Isolation and control derived from fear. Ross could agree to have Earth pretend to be a threat to planet Hala. And if Dar-Ben takes over planet Hala, she could agree to serve as a threat to planet Earth. They could send each other threatening messages and launch pre-coordinated attacks on each other's planets, all to paint the facade of a war that will make their people fall in line behind their respective leaders and surrender full control. Sort of like how Emperor Palpatine played both sides of the war in the Star Wars prequels, which manipulated the Republic to grant him the role of Emperor of the entire galaxy.
The Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire!
And we could see Ross turn into Red Hulk and go to space to talk about this evil plan with Dar-Ben.
Right? That'd be awesome. Maybe we could even see him stay in his Red Hulk form permanently like Professor Hulk in Endgame.
Red Hulk president? Sign me up.
Now, we do have a video coming up soon about the future of Gaia and her new god status in the MCU. I mean, you could argue that she's now the most powerful being in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. So we have to assume that she'll likely have a big role to play going forward.
Do you think she's going to be a Thunderbolt?
Well, I mean, it's possible, but I kind of doubt it. I'd assume that the Thunderbolts are going to fall for Ross's fear-mongering, at least at first. I mean, why else would they join his team? But I don't see Gaia falling for Ross's lies, especially because, she's a Skrull. I think what's more likely to happen is that Gaia will become the face of Ross's smear campaign against the Skrulls. Not only are there shape-shifting aliens amongst us, but there's one with the powers of almost every Avenger. Ross can use this to scare the world into falling in line. And he can also use her to bring together the Thunderbolts, making the argument that Gaia has too much powerful for a single person and she can't be trusted. So the Thunderbolts may actually be about them hunting down Gaia and bringing her to Ross. But then of course they'll realize that Ross is the real bad guy, he'll hulk out, they'll turn against him and have a big old third act smackdown. It writes itself.
But wasn't Gaia recruited to be part of a team or something like Yelena and John Walker?
Yes, but not the same team. This is likely a setup for another Marvel team of Marvel heroes, MI-13, a UK-based team of enhanced individuals with the mission of protecting Britain from superhuman, mystical, and extraterrestrial threats. In the comics, this team includes characters such as Blade and the Black Knight, a duo that we saw teased in the post-credits scene in the Eternals.
Sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitney?
Oh, so it's another team of super people Marvel's teasing, but we likely won't see for another 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, basically.
Awesome.
And just a reminder, everyone, to change your bad habits today. Head to tryfume.com, that's F-U-M, and use the code ScreenCrush to save an additional 10% off your order today. But that's just my thoughts on the ending. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
Zone is strong.
All right.
You had.
I thought that was good. All right, watch this.
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy. So we got an advanced copy of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 Blu-ray, and it is filled with new reveals, Easter eggs, deleted scenes, and teases for a sequel in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I'm going to break down all these new Easter eggs, the deleted scenes, and explain exactly what we can expect from the next Guardians of the Galaxy film and from the High Evolutionary.
Wait, he's alive?
Yes, and we're going to talk about what could happen next for the best villain of the multiverse saga so far. But first, let's break down some of these new Easter eggs. In the featurette, James Gunn has an interesting way of describing this movie.
I said this is the biggest movie ever made about a raccoon accepting the fact that he's a raccoon, which is really what the heart of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is.
Gunn then went on to describe his trilogy. The first film was about the mother, the second film was about the father, and this film is about the self. It's about Rocket accepting who he really is and finally learning to love himself so he can love others. So right away in the audio commentary, Gunn revealed that Nowhere is the largest set ever built for a Marvel movie. And that's saying something because there were parts of the Avengers Age of Ultron set that Joss Whedon never even saw.
I literally finished shooting on this set and on that day walked into a corner I had never been in.
The set took up an entire soundstage and was several stories tall. No wonder they wanted to shoot the Guardians holiday special. I mean, they had the set, they might as well film extra stuff on it. The movie gives a larger role to Cosmo the Space Dog, played by Borat 2's exceptional Maria Bakalova. And
more like Maria Bakalova.
I love you so much. High five. But what we didn't realize before is that she was on set for all the Cosmo scenes, crawling around on all fours like a dog.
Ah, please, man, I hate flies. Get that stupid fly out of here.
Hey, Doug, calm down. Don't get your underwear all in a bunch.
Wait, what is that anyways? I hear that word all the time.
What, underwear? You don't wear underwear?
No, I'm pretty much always Pooh Bear in it.
Oh, well, I'll show you. Hang on. See, these are my boxers.
Huh? How did you do that?
What kind of underwear is this? Well, I'm glad you asked. These are sheath boxer shorts, which are perfect for hot weather because
that seems weird.
Order will arrive in just that's sheathunderwear.com/crush, or just click the link below and use the code CRUSH for 20% off. Now, back to what I was saying. James Gunn also talked about how close Rocket and Nebula had become during the blip. Since they were the only Guardians left, he confirmed that Rocket built a new arm for Nebula and that he completed her face. Rocket actually gave Nebula this new arm because, in the holiday special, she gave him Bucky's arm.
Bucky's arm?
In fact, there's a really sad moment later in the audio commentary where Gunn reveals why Rocket wanted prosthetic limbs.
That dude there, I need his prosthetic leg.
Okay, how much for the arm?
So, in the audio commentary, shortly after Rocket's anger got his friends killed, Gunn says,
I mean, he's the guy that wants somebody's arm, right? And look at his friends that he killed. What do they have? They have, not real arms. They have artificial limbs.
That's so sad.
Yeah, and after Guardians 3, a lot of past scenes hit really hard, like Rocket and Peter flying.
And me and my friends are gonna go flying together into the forever and beautiful sky.
Or, this. All of the actors playing the animals were actually shot together in mocap suits, so you really can see elements of, say, Linda Cardellini's face in Lila. And get this, the actor who plays Floor also played the assistant to Nova Prime in Guardians 1 right here. As for the High Evolutionary, Gunn said that a major big-name actor was in line to get the role. Wouldn't say who it was, though. But after he worked with Chuck Awuji on Peacemaker, he wanted the part to go directly to him. There were even cool things where, like, Awuji's audition for the role was filmed by DC, and the Justice League cameo in Peacemaker was filmed by Marvel. Anyways, he told Awuji that he got the part on the day they filmed the Peacemaker dance sequence. Also, apparently, the High Evolutionary's treatments make him also kind of intoxicated. Which I thought was interesting because when you go back and look, every time he acts irrationally or makes like a huge mistake because he's angry, it's usually right after one of his treatments. The spaceship, the Bowie, is another practical set that was 2 stories tall. It allowed them to move the camera much more freely on set as opposed to like a green screen or filming in the volume. This is great because it's important to give fantastical movies like this a real texture so we, the audience, have some kind of attachment to the real world. When the Ravagers show up, Martin X is still played by Smallville's Michael Rosenbaum, an old friend of James Gunn's, but Gunn didn't like his look in the Guardians 2 post-credit scene, so he revamped him. And I was surprised to hear that Gunn loved writing the new Gamora most of all out of all the characters. He could have been really bitter that she was killed in Infinity War and cut his trilogy short, but instead he said that it was a blast to give her that same violent edge that she started the trilogy with. Sean Gunn provided the voice for young Rocket, which is so cool because Sean has always been the stand-in for Rocket on set. So just as he was the original Rocket when they filmed, he was the original voice for Rocket when he was a kid. Also, the jaw movement of the young Rocket was based on James Gunn's dog. Now, a lot of you probably know that one of Gunn's dogs appeared in the Morag hologram in Guardians 1 right here. Man, that's awesome. He's the best. Nathan Fillion has been in every James Gunn movie, and apparently all of his interplay with his employee here—
I thought you said something else. Shut up.
—was worked out on set, just because this guy with the makeup was so funny and fun to work with.
Got that brand new Fuselix core, you know what I'm talking about? Oh, yeah. Really, because I just made that up.
Which was great, because this is some of my favorite banter in the movie.
He's the boss's nephew. He's a little...
Yeah, I got one of those too.
And Gunn also encapsulated the movie really well around this point.
And the third movie is about the self. It's about all the things we do to keep ourselves from being ourselves.
Like I said before, Rocket has to learn to love himself before he can learn to love others. When they escape the Orgoscope, Mantis causes chaos in the hangar bay, and Gunn in particular pointed out this dancing guy who I never noticed before. He also fully explained how Groot's speech works and why some people understand him and others can't, and why we hear this at the end of the movie.
I love you guys.
Gunn says that Groot's species is actually telepathic, but you have to get to know the person in order to understand them. In other words, Groot's powers are a function of the movie's theme, empathy.
We are Groot.
We see this when Gamora finally understands him.
I'm Groot.
Thanks. Just tell them I'm gonna be right.
And finally, when we, the audience, understand him at the end. Blurb is a species called an Asaka, and we actually saw one of them racing an Orlani in the first Guardians in the bar.
My Orlani has won, as I wanted all things.
Except Blurb is a furry Asaka. He was actually voiced by D. Bradley Baker, who voices all of the clones in the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch, and was Eagly in Peacemaker.
The invisible bone!
Gunn also went into a lot of detail about Adam Warlock that I found fascinating. Now, a lot of you know that, I love Adam Warlock. I pitched my idea for an Adam Warlock movie on this channel, and I am looking forward to seeing him being used on a greater scale. But originally, Warlock was going to be in the Aisha role in Guardians 2 as the ruler of the Sovereign. But it was too much for the screenplay to bear, so Gunn wrote him down to just a little tease instead.
I think I should call him Adam.
Now, in Guardians 2, originally Warlock was going to carry around a cat, but after Goose was introduced in Captain Marvel, the cat became Blurb in this movie. So, on Counter-Earth, they actually created a language for the Humanimals that was about 150 words. And get this, the Bat Husband is played by Randy Havens, who played Mr. Clark on Stranger Things.
Is that your car in the driveway?
Oh.
Hell.
Gunn also talked about how Rocket has this journey in the movie where he finally starts to do things for other people. Like in the first film, we saw that he had no concept of empathy.
We can destroy the galaxy? What are you, some saint all of a sudden? What has the galaxy ever done for you? Why would you want to save it?
And then he starts to do nice things for his friends, but this movie ends with Rocket actually helping out strangers, lower life forms, the animals. And I'm not gonna lie, it was tough rewatching the scene where Teefs, Floor, and Lila die. Gunn points out that Rocket's always been a bit of a kleptomaniac. We saw him steal batteries in Volume 2.
You want to buy some batteries?
And he stole a knife for Thor in Infinity War, and in this movie we see that he's been stealing components to build a key card with. His scene is also tragic because it's like Rocket's original sin. He gets angry after Lila's murder, and he lashes out against the High Evolutionary, causing the deaths of Teefs and Floor. When just a bit earlier in the movie, Rocket was the very model of a docile creature.
They're programmed to be peaceful. Like you.
The High Evolutionary's main chamber was part set that became CGI at the top, and Gunn admitted he couldn't even tell where the CGI began and ended. In the scene where he confronts Groot and Peter, the High Evolutionary uses gravity against them. So this is to show that he has godlike powers, but earlier in the movie, Rocket used gravity boots, which he also used in his final fight against the High Evolutionary. So this is showing how Rocket is better than the High Evolutionary, somebody who can not only fix problems that the High Evolutionary can't, but who has a greater command over the forces of nature. The poker game is filled with Easter eggs that we missed in our original breakdown. I saw the broker and Howard the Duck, of course, but this guy is the lead singer from the old 97s, the band from the holiday special. And this is Steamy Blue Limber, who was this nowhere dispatcher in Guardians 1. And also notice that Cosmo is using telekinesis to hold up her cards. This guy is my old boss, Lloyd Kaufman, the co-founder of Troma Studios, who also gave Gunn his first shot at screenwriting with Tromeo and Juliet.
Wait, you worked for Troma Studios?
Dude, everybody's worked for Troma Studios. So have you. So they developed a language for these kids, even though they were mostly just one word.
Jube, jube.
So like Drax says, Jube means friend, but this species will emphasize something by saying it twice. So Jube Jube means good friend. The controller of this ship was actually designed and created to be a part of the ship. Like that's her only function in life. And she can never leave this station. It's a good way of making sure that nobody steals your ship, but what a hellish existence for this thing.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
This goes to show how the High Evolutionary believes that creatures are created for only a singular purpose, and not everyone deserves to live a life where you get to dance. This is when Gunn revealed that the movie had more makeup effects than any other film, actually beating out The Grinch That Stole Christmas. Also, and this is heartbreaking, remember how Guardians 2 opened with them fighting the Obelisk? Well, in the commentary here, Gunn reveals that the Obelisk in Volume 2 was just trying to play with them. It didn't understand that they were trying to hurt it.
That's so sad.
It really is. So earlier in the movie, Rocket actually died. He met Lila in the afterlife, and then she confirmed that God is real.
There are the hands that made us, and then there are the hands that guide the hands.
And in this clip with Kraglin where he sees Yondu, Gunn says that this is Yondu calling from the spirit world, not like a hallucination from Kraglin.
And at first, I just had his voice show up. I did, but I said, you know what? I think Kraglin might see him there, reaching to him from the spirit dimension.
Here's your sign for sale-free savings at Aldi. Ta-da!
Which is yet another example of the afterlife in the MCU. We have the Soul World, the Field of Reeds, Valhalla, and now wherever the hell Yondu is. Gunn also confirmed the reason why Kraglin turned on Yondu in Volume 2. He was always jealous that Peter Quill was Yondu's favorite, and he got all of the attention over the years.
I just gotta say it this one time, Captain. No matter how many times Quill betrays you, you protect him like none of the rest of us much matter.
And this also ties in nicely with the holiday special when Kraglin talks about their Christmas with Peter. Then we have the No Sleep Till Brooklyn hallway fight, which we broke down in this video, by the way. Great video, you should really check it out. Gunn talks about how important the soundtracks were in these movies and why he thought it was important to incorporate the Zune and newer music. See, Peter in the first film was stuck in the 70s and 80s, so we get to see his taste in music evolve. And the Guardians' taste in music evolves as well as Rocket gets attached to the Zune. This evolution through the years of music is also symbolic of their evolution as people. Also, this weird little guy, that's played by James Gunn. And get this alien on the bridge is actually Pete Davidson. There's a longer extended scene of him and Peter Quill that Gunn decided was too distracting, so they kept Pete Davidson, but they gave him a CGI head. Remember, Davidson and Gunn worked together on the Suicide Squad. And Gunn talked about how this line hit very hard for him personally.
He says, everyone deserves a second chance.
This is because Gunn was fired from Disney for some really stupid tweets after writing Guardians 3. But Warner Brothers gave him a second chance with the Suicide Squad, and then Gunn was eventually rehired by Disney. And then the real tearjerker when Rocket sees the kids. He focuses on the little one, who is the runt of the litter, just like Rocket was. Listen to how Gunn describes this.
Saving his own kind, he's saving himself, right? But here he looks around and he sees all the other animals and realizes he is all of them.
So the real meaning of all these movies is actually... The Guardians team up against the High Evolutionary, and Rocket, who is new to empathy, decides to spare his life. But they didn't leave him there to die. There's a deleted scene we'll talk about in just a bit that confirms he's alive, and also, during the escape, you can see Drax carrying him right here. When Star-Lord gets stranded in space, this is not CGI. They really did shoot Chris Pratt into space and he almost died.
Wait, what, really?
No, not really. But they did have him wear a practical effects mask. And earlier in the film when Nebula is carrying Star-Lord, that's actually a 30-pound Chris Pratt dummy that James Gunn started to keep in his office as a joke. And here we have the obvious Michelangelo reference to the Sistine Chapel, God creating Adam. But Gunn pointed out another Michelangelo Easter egg that I missed. Earlier in the movie, the way Adam is sitting with Aisha mirrors another Michelangelo masterpiece, the Pieta, where Mary cradles the body of Christ. Now remember this scene where Gamora finally understands Groot?
I am Groot.
Yeah. It's good working with you two.
Now remember, this is a new version of Groot. This is the offspring of the Groot from the first film. Baby Groot, all grown up. That Groot grew up with Gamora as his mom. So it really hurts his feelings that earlier in the movie, Gamora didn't know him or understand him.
I can't understand your accent.
but now she does, and it means a lot to him. And then the dance party at the end. That's actually James Gunn doing Groot's dance moves, just like he's done in the previous 2 movies. And he gets really emotional talking about this in the commentary because Rocket was played by his brother Sean, and the 2 of them were getting to dance and make this movie together, just like they dreamed when they were kids. He even put his mom and dad in the credits, and this movie was made shortly after his father passed away, and it's dedicated to him. Also, there's a penguin dancing right here. Gunn also talked about the Star-Lord ending, the legendary Star-Lord will return tease. Now, at the time, I thought this might have just been a gag because it's Peter eating cereal, but he and Chris Pratt did talk about this, how seeing Star-Lord's adventures on Earth would be really interesting. Personally, I think a Star-Lord movie should be a stealth sequel to the Eternals, with Star Fox recruiting a half-Celestial, Peter Quill, to find the other Celestials and save the Eternals. Talked about a lot in this video. So, that's enough of the Easter eggs. Let's break down these deleted scenes, starting with my favorite, when Warlock is just a bit too much. This scene is right after Nebula wounds him, and he's with Aisha on their ship. Now, he is immediately acting like a big dumb kid.
I will kill all your enemies for you.
All right, my love. The movie is clear to point out that Adam was hatched from his pod too early, so he has this immense power, but the mind of an adolescent boy. And this scene proves it. After Aisha blames the Guardians for all their troubles, Adam goes off on a rant.
I will kill all your enemies for you.
All right, my love. That just kind of evolves.
I will stomp on their skulls.
Thank you. Until finally, he sounds like a 10-year-old online playing Fortnite.
I'm going to piss on their dead bodies and make love to their carcasses.
And then, after she tells him that that's a bit too much, he nails this killer line.
Well, it's what a man does, Mother.
I love this scene because it gives Adam more of an arc throughout the movie. He starts off the film only caring about his own people and seeing everyone else as just someone to bash and smush. But by the end, he's joining in on the group hug. And by the way, James Gunn told him to join the group hug on set. It wasn't scripted. He just shouted at a microphone, "Get in there and do that hug." Point is, at the beginning, we see Adam behaving how he thinks a man should behave, and eventually he learns how to behave like a man. The next deleted scene is called A Helping Hand. It happens right after Batwoman falls down and Peter offers her a cloth for her wound. In our Easter egg video, I pointed out how this simple show of empathy connects the 2 of them, and how that mirrors Lila making a connection with young Rocket in the flashback. Just like in this movie, it's an emotional scene. What do you mean? But the moment of connection is undermined when Mantis says,
I just saw him blow his nose into that.
And this is what most of the deleted scenes are. They cut about half an hour of the movie by trimming fat and excess jokes, but it's really cool to see how much of Mantis' facial expressions are on pomp and not done through CGI. Next, there's a scene where Drax is making an analogy and metaphor to Peter about lily pads. Now, in the movie, Peter pretty quickly gets wise to this.
It's sort of an analogy. And I didn't know that you were capable of that type of thought.
And then the deception falls apart when he sees Mantis. Drax tries to prove that he knows what a metaphor is.
And life is like a pond, because like a pond, the atmosphere is comprised of H2O.
It goes on for a while, feels kind of loose, a little improvised, although Drax does end with a line that does sum up James Gunn's entire philosophy.
Weirdness is everywhere, and life is magic.
It must have pained Gunn to cut that line because it's a really, really, really good line. Let's hear it again.
Weirdness is everywhere, and life is magic.
And then he follows it up with this.
I made a poop shaped like a fish.
So let's move on. The next scene is during the High Evolutionary's monologue to Peter. But then he goes off on a very, very weird tangent.
In case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo.
After Peter says,
I don't need another speech by some impotent whack job whose mother didn't love him, rationalizing why he needs to conquer the universe.
The High Evolutionary responds with,
My mother did not love me. Not after at the age of 12, I grafted a face onto the family doll. Not her actual face, a genetic copy.
What the Okay, so 2 things. That sounds like it was inspired by this scene in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and 2, this is giving me like real Dr. Evil vibes.
The age of 14 as a rostry named Vilma ritualistically shaved my testicles.
The next scene is called The Search for 89P13. It's pretty straightforward. After the pig woman, voiced by Judy Greer, fails to capture Rocket, this minion makes a report to the High Evolutionary. Now this scene is fascinating because it shows us just how practical the effects in this movie are. I mean, the monster here is in the mocap suit, but the pilot with the makeup effects is like there in the room. And Judy Greer's pig head was a real prop that they built just to throw it on the ground. It's probably why they hated to cut this scene. Also, this reveals that they have bacon in space.
Depends on how much you like bacon.
The next scene is one that I mentioned earlier where Pete Davidson is one of the High Evolutionary soldiers. What are you doing here?
Waiting for them to play Gangnam Style. I've been practicing all week.
Now, he and Gunn are friends in real life, and it's a fun cameo, but like really totally distracting. When Peter's trying to hotwire the shields, there's a whip hand to Davidson and a surprise cameo.
Yeah, once it's purple, you can just go right through.
So he is talking about the shields that we saw earlier in the film when they first broke into the Orgoscope. So it's even more frustrating for Peter Quill and us because we know that Peter knows what he's doing. He's already done it earlier in the movie. Next, there is an extended sequence of Peter escaping the ship. Now, it obviously wasn't finished because that would have been super expensive. But I love seeing action scenes like this in various stages of completion. Like, it's crazy how far in the process they get sometimes before they decide that a sequence is too long, too expensive, or just too much. Personally, I'm not a fan of really big extended set pieces like this because they're not grounded enough in reality. Kind of like the stair collapse in the Mines of Moria or the lightsaber fighting in Revenge of the Sith when they're like on the top of the thing and the lava's falling. It just takes me out of the moment. I think digital effects have advanced so far that filmmakers really need to learn how to hold back in places where the environment starts to take focus away from the character. It is fun to see Chris Pratt doing some wire work in this, but the sequence is like best kept really short. Peter using the air hose to propel himself, followed by that devastating run-in with debris. That sells the scene way better when the sequence is short, in my opinion. And finally, we have the most important deleted scene that's actually been online for a while. We see that the High Evolutionary survived the destruction of his ship, and the Guardians have taken him prisoner. I am so excited for this scene because it means that, one, it's a better ending if the Guardians show him mercy, and two, it means that Chuck Woody Iwuji can play a role going forward in the multiverse saga. So, let's look at this scene. Rocket gets to do the honors of locking him up in this very public cage in a public square, almost like he's being put on display to the people of nowhere so the children can come by and make jeers.
That's not very merciful, person.
Well, he did commit genocide. He deserves to be made fun of. We also see him try to reattach his face, showing us his vanity. Now, the reason he hates Rocket is because he sees himself as perfect and doesn't understand how his imperfect creation can be smarter than him. And it's also that his imperfect creation was able to sully his own perfection. So now, going forward, I am very excited to see where the High Evolutionary can appear again. For instance, if Kang is trying to remake the multiverse into a single universe that he controls, then the High Evolutionary would be of use to him. I could see these two in a team-up film trying to construct the perfect universe. Or we could see a live-action adaptation of the comics crossover, The Evolutionary War, when the High Evolutionary tried to remake all of Earth into a world in his own image. I could also see him being broken out of jail by the Eternals, so they could use his expertise in genetic manipulation to find a weakness within the Celestials, kind of like we talked about in this video. Who knows, maybe we could eventually see this guy find a redemption arc.
It's never too late to stop being a dick.
And then we get to see the recruitment of the new Guardians. Kraglin brings water to Phi Lavelle, who later joins the team, and then Adam Warlock, a key member of the current Guardians team in the comics. After he tells him his name, Kraglin says,
Adam ain't no hero name. You need something metal. Something cool like Molly Hatchet, Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, something cool like that.
And of course, those are actual heavy metal bands. After he replies that he likes the name Adam, Kraglin says,
Adam by itself sucks.
5 minutes later.
And then we see the people of Nowhere taking care of the High Evolutionary's refugees, a neat way to show that they are all now part of this community, as opposed to just Nebula telling us this later on.
We're building a new society, and I need all the support I can get for those children out there.
And also, there's a monkey. This extended sequence really does hit home for me about the film's main theme of empathy. We see the people of Nowhere being empathetic to the High Evolutionary's refugees. We see Rocket being empathetic to the High Evolutionary. And I think this would have been a nice setup to the dance sequence at the end of the film, but you can understand why they cut it. We already have the people of Nowhere gathered together at the very end. It's incredibly uplifting, so maybe this extra scene was just a bit too much. But what do you guys think? Which deleted scene do you like the most? Are you excited to see the High Evolutionary in the future of the MCU? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Eric.
end, you know, he was looking for counters. And so I figured, and I was like, oh, that was nice.
I need to run.